Ladies and gentlemen.
Whoa. You think you could just walk on here and take over the set?
Yep.
All right, take it away, sweetheart.
As the temperatures rise, the birds begin to sing, and families start getting outside again. One thing's clear. Spring has sprung.
Good job. All right, skedaddle. Let's see you go on upstairs. Can you leave me alone now?
Nope.
For episode 51, we got one of the state's leading mental health and suicide prevention advocates, Troy Belmer.
Rock on, dude.
Besides being passionate about fitness, women's wrestling, and people pursuing their dreams, Troy is co-founder of the mental health juggernaut that is alive and running Iowa. So if you are struggling or need help finding resources for someone who is, you are in the right place. Also, shout out to Troy's good friend Ryan Nesbit for completing his 32-mile run the other day. Good luck on that 50 miles on your birthday, pal. All right, here's your host. Let me check around. I don't see anybody. Okay. Here's your... Oh, no!
Hi, Daddy. We're back.
Proceed.
Here's that goofy host, Bubba Simmons.
Ladies and gentlemen, what is up? Welcome back for another episode of one of the best, fastest growing, real-life, homegrown podcasts on the market. Before we get to today's episode and our special guest, I got to remind everybody, whether you're listening or watching, we are trying to double our followers on all podcast and social media platforms this year. So please, if you haven't already, or if you're new here, if Mark Woodley got you sucked in and now you're hooked, that's great. If you're new, we're glad you're here. Please like, follow, subscribe wherever you're listening or watching. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, we're everywhere you find your podcast. Leave us a 5-star rating if you can. Click the bell. You know all about that stuff. Tell us what you think, like or dislike. If you don't like it, that's fine. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear from you. Share with everyone you know. What's the point of consuming something and then you like it and then you don't share it? Come on, think more of your friends. Share it. This is how we continue to grow and reach more and more people. Then follow our Facebook and our Instagram, and we're on TikTok now. You want to see some embarrassing reels? You want to see some promotional reels? You want to see sneak peeks of every episode? I'm starting to drop those almost daily just to build up to each episode. So follow us there. Share what you like there with all your friends on your social media. You want some of our merch? You want some new drip? That's what the kids say today, Troy.
I heard that. I just heard that about a month ago.
If you want some of our merch, it still sounds weird saying that, but I'm trying to be funny with it, I guess. Just email me, whatisuppodcast@gmail.com. Tell us what you want. Shirt, hat, whatever size, color you want. My wife will hook you up. She's good at that. So, and we're not making money off this stuff, guys. We try and sell it like nearly at cost just to get the name out there. That's it. So you won't find cheaper stuff around. Then send us a picture of yourself wearing our awesome gear. That would help out a lot too. And I had this new idea. If you happen to see my guest today or anybody with a shirt or a hat or something out there in public, you have my permission to just paparazzi them. Just grab a picture. You don't need their permission. This ain't LA. Take their picture, send it to me, tag me, post it, whatever. However you do all that stuff. And that would be awesome. You might just win yourself a prize. You never know. But before we get going, I want to give a shout out to my buddies over there at the Steve Brown Art Center in Jesup. They are the creative heart of Buchanan County. The Steve Brown Art Center is a thriving community where art flourishes. With dynamic exhibits and interactive workshops, they spark creativity and passion. Discover a world of artistic inspiration at the Steve Brown Art Center. To learn more about the Steve Brown Art Center, just head over to their Facebook page and check out what they're all about. Once you've done all that, then you can sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. And let me tell you, we got a good one for you today. Our guest today grew up roaming the same mean streets of small-town Dunkerton that I did, but he crossed over county lines and had ties to Jesup since he poured his heart and soul into the wrestling program for the Jayhawks back in the day. Then the harsh reality set in that life is not something to take for granted when he had to deal with losing a high school friend to suicide. But life goes on. Fitness and sports became a passion of his, so much so that he would often be the last man standing most nights at the legendary S&S gym in Dunkerton. I was witness to that. This guy may look like Clark Kent during the day with his nice shirt and tie at the office, but don't be fooled. He's up at 4:30 every day throwing weight around like Superman in the weight room. His real passion these days arose from the ashes of the worst moment of his childhood. He and high school classmate Ryan Nesbit, along with their spouses, founded Alive and Running Iowa, solely to fight back against the rise in suicide and mental health struggles in our state. Their dedication to provide support and resources to anyone who is struggling mentally or affected by suicide of a loved one has truly made a difference in our state. Of course, I'm talking about race car enthusiast, fitness guru, mental health advocate, Troy Belmer. What is up, man?
Hey, man, how are you? It's great to be here.
How was that?
That's great.
That was good.
Yeah.
I'm kind of a hype man. I will.
I like it.
It's most of my intros are like 95% truthful. It doesn't matter. So, all right, let's. I got some stuff in my notes here. Just a little small talk to warm up. Let's see. So you're a little bit older than me, right? How old are you?
I will be 50 on Tuesday.
Okay, not that much. Okay, and I'm 43. I'll be 44. So yeah, we definitely missed each other in high school. By the time I got into high school, I had heard all the stories about how good the athletes were around your generation, maybe like 5, 6, 7, 8 years older than me. It was always and I still hear it today. If I'm talking to somebody, say from like Nashua Plainfield or something, like my buddy Shannon Folkerts, he would say, "Oh yeah, like I remember like Jay Weidman and guys like and your name's in there, Troy Belmer and these different guys." And so by the time I got to high school, I was like, "Man, we got like," and even the seniors that were seniors when I was a freshman, like the Joe Carter, the Matt Tissue, so they would have been
2 years behind me.
Okay, there we go. So like those guys to me, they look like college athletes. When I was in 8th grade, I was like, "Man, we can't live up to that." But yeah, it was like almost like we had to live up to certain expectations, but we did not because we stopped playing A football and started playing 1A football, and we were not we were not good. What was it like? I mean, excelling in sports in Dunkerton.
Man, I'll tell you, we had a good class, and like Weidman was a year older than us. That was a really good class. 2 years ahead of that was good. I mean, so there was a lot of good athletes in Dunkerton at the time. It's always been a basketball school, still is.
Yep.
So we struggled in football like everyone, but it was always like so close to being so good, right?
Yeah,
Like you'd hang in there and play with the best teams, but just not quite enough.
Yep.
And that hurt when you had like so many good athletes, excel in basketball, excel in track, which I've always been a good track school too.
Yep.
But football was always a little bit of a grind, but you could just play those teams so tight. And then you're just a little bit short, right?
Right.
But,
yeah.
A lot of fun.
That's the best way to put it. It was fun. Like I remember, I don't think I ever played with, but like we would play Sunday football, no pads, no nothing. I think Tommy came down one day in a jersey, like him and Tony Snyder and some of these guys, and I was like a freshman or a sophomore. And I was like, didn't Tony go to Ellsworth or something like that? And I was just scared to death. And it's like, but we all Dunkerton like probably loved football. The kids loved football. Yeah. They excelled at basketball and track and still do, but yeah, man, it was just.
So did you ever know about the Dunkerton Doer War back in the day?
No.
Oh boy. So how old was I? Late elementary, maybe junior high. So there was this Dunkerton Doer football game, and it was Dunkerton versus Doer, and Doer cheated, and they stole Joe Knievel from us and somebody else. Because they claimed that they were Doer kids. They weren't. They're Dunkerton kids. Anyway, we played a game on the field at Dunkerton. They won because they cheated. But it was really cool. So it was like Dunkerton versus Doer. Yeah, we still talk about it today. Yeah, it was awesome.
How do you cheat, though? Like city limits? Or well, I know, but you either live in one town or the other, and then I guess you got the rural kids. But
it was like it was like the transfer portal before it existed.
But Doer is so small. How did they have a crop of guys?
Oh, they had a lot. I mean, they had the Jacobsons over there and Jason Amy and Maurer.
Okay.
Darren McGee, Scott Schmidt. I mean, they had a lot of people in and around. And I don't really know where we divided the gravel roads, probably like halfway or something, right? But
Wow.
yeah, the Dunkerton Doer battle. Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to have to bring
It's
that up
epic.
from time to time.
Yeah.
No, okay.
History lesson for you. There you go.
Yeah. Oh, I can't believe I've never heard that. That's awesome. So I hinted to it in your intro. Like, I do remember my wife, her dad owned a gym. Her and her uncle owned that gym down there at the old locker building in Dunkerton. And, one half was like the locker, and the other half I think was like was it a creamery or something at some point or whatever. But Stan and Scott had like renovated one side of it and made it into this. I mean, it was a bare bones gym. It was mirrors and free weights, and that was it. And I don't know what time at night it would be, but from time to time when we were younger, I remember Stan would tell Sarah or Lance, hey, go down, lock up. And, if I was there, we'd walk down or whatever, and you'd still be there sometimes. I probably only saw it a handful of times, but, as you get older, the stories grow. So now it's like every night.
Right.
Troy's there lifting at midnight. No, it was probably like 6, 7 o'clock, whatever, and Stan wanted the gym locked up. And you're still into that. You're still into fitness and different types of, I'm sure you do everything. Where's that passion come from?
It comes from a couple of things. So, I grew up, I got to be a fat kid, right?
Okay.
So like 3rd grade to 8th grade, I was a fat kid. And then I lost weight through wrestling, and then that kind of just fueled it all from there, right?
Okay.
When I was wrestling when I was a little kid, so I'm short, still short. So short, fat kids wrestle tall kids, and I just hated it. So I quit wrestling, which I enjoyed it until, that happened.
Sure.
And then there's just other stuff that goes along with being a chunky kid. Like I still joke with my mom, she'd buy me these jeans, and they were husky jeans.
Husky jeans.
And I said, those are fat kid jeans. No, they're not. They're not for fat kid. I'm like, everyone at school says I got fat kid jeans, So I think when I lost the weight, then it just became a thing to just stay with it. And now it's today's world. There's physical stuff. Like I love to beat myself up on that in the gym, but it's more mental, right? Like if I don't do something that's hard every day, I just feel like my day doesn't start. So now it's more mental, and it's my alone time. I work out in a garage all by myself, and people ask about that, and it's like I've been to gyms. I was big into CrossFit for a long time, did competitions and everything, and I just enjoy grinding by myself.
Just
it's
a solo
time to be
mission.
alone. Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. Have you found it harder as you get old? I mean, you said you're going to be 50. Have you found it harder, or are you kind of saying like as long as you stay in it, like the decline is slower, or?
Yeah. So, like especially through the CrossFit thing, with CrossFit, it's timed workouts and stuff. So, I've got records of, like when I did Fran back in the day or different workouts like that. And I can't compete with those times anymore, but I can still do it.
Yeah.
And it, like before I got into CrossFit, those workouts were things I couldn't do at all. So now it's like, well, in my early 30s, I couldn't even have done that. And then, in my prime there, I did really well with them. And, now I'm approaching 50 and still able to do it. So for me, it's just it's just a way to validate myself every day and feel good that, and I would say the other thing that probably drives me is I remember when my dad got later in life and he started to get sick and stuff. We were talking one day and he said, if I would have known I was going to live this long, I would have took better care of myself.
Sure.
And that always resonated with me, like, yeah, take care of myself. Because my dad didn't, and paid for that in his later years. And
sure.
I want to enjoy those years.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't know. I mean, growing up, you see what you see, and it's like you don't know any different. Like, I mean, I can totally resonate with that for sure. I see a lot of these things on social media now. Not a lot, but I see them pop up, and I'm like, these guys know what's up, because they show a guy working out, maybe in his 40s or whatever, and they say, you're doing these farmer carries and stuff like that, not for competition, not for it's so you can still carry in your own groceries at 60, 70 years old.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're doing the sandbag carries or whatever, so you can hold your grandkids and just different things, exactly like you're saying. Brian was probably hinting to. He would have done more. And you obviously can, because I remember when I was still doing triathlon, I'd see these guys, there's 60, 70-year-old divisions for that stuff. And these guys can still run. So that tells you their backs are in good enough shape. They can still take. Well, how did they do that? You know what I mean? Or like Ryan tells me he's almost same age as you or whatever, and he's running good and he's healthy, and he just is so proud of that. And it's like, you took the Toby Keith advice. You didn't let the old man in or whatever. Or no, that was Clint Eastwood. Clint Eastwood told Toby Keith that, I think. And it's kind of like once you have, like, just don't let it go. Do something. Be active. If a day goes by and you don't do something, you should probably have this little voice in the back of your head saying, man, come on, you can do better than that. And it's going to pay off in the long run. I totally agree with that, for sure. And I think I can do better than that. With that, for sure. I've fallen off the wagon.
Well, speaking of Ryan, so today he's doing like some 32 or 34 mile training run. So I saw this morning he put on Facebook he was going to do some laps around Jesup and then run the Dunkerton and back, and then, I don't know, 7 miles around Jesup or whatever to get ready. Because May 3rd he turns 50, and so he wants to run a 50-mile deal.
Yep.
Well, I saw him on Canfield on the way here, so I give him a pretty good honk. The old red van was behind him, following him along. So I don't know who he convinced to follow him along all day, but somebody's in that red van following him along.
Followed him for what? Security?
I guess, right? Paparazzi? I don't know.
Come on, Ryan. What are you doing? You don't need security around here. Yeah, real rough, rural Black Hawk and Buchanan County. Come on. You throw some water on your belt or whatever.
Right.
Come on, guy. All right, that's cool. Well, we could talk about this stuff all day. We better get into it because we definitely want to get into, your main passion and everything, alive and running, mental health. We want to save some time for that at the end of this part 1. So if that's what you're tuning in for, we're going to get to it. But first, we are going to just go back to the beginning. Tell us a little bit about the childhood. Tell us what it was like. I didn't know you were a fellow fat kid like myself. You know what I mean? Go back to the beginning. Tell us about, Badger. Tell us about whatever you want from your childhood.
Yeah. So I was born in Fort Dodge, just in the hospital there. And we live in a small town called Badger, which is, man, smaller than Dunkerton for sure. Not a lot smaller. But anyway, we lived there until I was 5. And then my dad got a job transfer to move over to Waterloo. He was driving a truck at the time, so they moved into Waterloo to run out of that terminal. So he moved to Dunkerton. I started kindergarten in Dunkerton. My brother was 4 years older, so he had to start, kind of in the middle of his elementary. But so I got to know everybody from kindergarten on up, and lived in Dunkerton, grew up there, enjoyed the town. We lived right behind the football fields. Everything was really easy access. Funny fat kid story. So I used to crawl under the fence to go slide down the hill in the wintertime.
Yeah.
And I got stuck under there one day like Winnie the Pooh. So I was out there screaming. And I think my mom or someone finally came out to pick the fence up so I could get my belly through there. It was awful.
That is a fat kid story.
Yeah.
Oh,
Totally got stuck
man.
under there. So yeah, grew up in Dunkerton and then went all through high school. And then probably, I think I was 19. And I moved to Minnesota for several years. I was selling water treatment equipment at the time, kind of following my dad's footsteps.
Okay.
And they opened up a new dealership up there. So I lived up there for, must have been about 6-7 years, and then came back here in 2000.
Okay.
And came back here, rented a house in Dewar for a little while. It was haunted. I lived in it. And
oh boy,
true story.
Oh boy.
That's a whole nother podcast. So then I met Candace, and we moved to Fairbank. Lived here the whole time. Pretty much Jaden was in school until we moved to Waterloo. So I wanted him to go to a small school. She went to West. I went to Dunkerton. So a little bit of convincing to get her to move to a small community.
Sure.
Right? But we enjoyed our time here. But then as he got older and was going to graduate, it just made more sense business-wise to be in town.
Yeah,
So
yeah, definitely.
moved there, and here we are.
Okay. In our notes, you got sisters in Missouri, and you had one sister pass away.
Yeah, I'll tell you a little bit about that. So the sisters I have in Missouri were from my dad's first marriage.
Okay.
But we never, ever grew up as half-sisters or half-brothers or steps. Like, my dad made it very clear that we were their brothers and they were our sisters.
Absolutely.
Like, it was never
Yeah.
steps or halves.
Yeah.
I don't even know what they truly really are. They're from my dad's first marriage. That's all I know, right?
Okay.
So Holly's my oldest one. Jill was the youngest one, both older than me. Jill passed away in 2018, basically from alcoholism. She kind of got her body wrapped around it, was a bartender, and just kind of fell into that. And ultimately that's what ended her life. But
Yeah.
we were able to be in the room when she took her last breath. And
Yeah.
so it's one of those weird death things. As you get older, you take appreciation in that stuff. But yeah, that was rough. So,
Yeah.
but we're still really tight with her daughter and her son, and
Good.
so still maintain those relationships. And yeah, and my sister Holly has 2 boys, and Yeah, they're down in the Ozarks area. So
Oh, nice.
yeah.
Has she been, have I met her? Has she been up around like Alive and Running or anything before?
they have been to Alive and Running a
Or
few
church?
times.
Has she come to church? Because it seems like Holly sounds familiar.
Holly used to come up like every single summer for
Okay.
a long time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I probably did see her at church or something. But yeah, alcoholism, that's, you know, you grow up thinking, you know, drunks are just drunks, but you realize it crosses a point where, like, if they don't have it, they can't function.
Yeah.
And to a point, you know, I can think of, you know, people we know from Dunkerton or whatever, and it's like the doctor tells them, you got to stop. Your liver's about ready to shut down, and they still can't.
Yeah.
Then you know that the doctor's telling you it's going to take your life if you don't stop. You can still turn this thing around, and they can't, and you just, and that's kind of a glimpse into like like that. Some people would say, oh, that's just, you know, weak will or whatever, but dude, at some point it's so ingrained in your mentality that you have to have it, that you'll ignore that life-saving advice because you just have to have it. So that's definitely a deeper issue for sure. Okay, let's see. Okay, I got to ask you. Let's go back to those junior high years. How does a kid from Dunkerton, like, we never had wrestling. I remember, I think a petition went around one time when I was in high school to try and get wrestling started, which we knew it wouldn't, because I mean that's a serious investment. Now the way they do it now is great. They just co-op with another school just for that sport.
Yep.
So and that's great. But how do you, back in the day, we're talking what, early 90s,
Yep.
right? How does a kid from Dunkerton get the courage to go cross county lines and wrestle for Jesup?
Yeah, so they started a sharing program, and it moved them from 1A to 2A. So it started my brother's senior year. I was in 8th grade. My brother was the only one that made it through. Actually made it into districts. He was 6 minutes away from making state.
Really?
It's a pretty amazing story. And so then, you know, I'm a fat kid at this point. So freshman year rolls around. I don't want to go out. You know, I have all these visions back being in 3rd grade and getting pounded on, and my brother really wants me to. And so finally he comes to me with, hey, just go there to lose weight.
Okay.
If you don't care about wrestling and you don't even want to be in a duel, just go lose weight.
Mm-hmm.
So I agreed to go out. And there were some other kids that started with me. Everyone else quit. I stuck through it. Lost a ton of weight my freshman year, and then really started to get into the sport of wrestling, right? Like,
Sure.
it gave me a lifestyle that I didn't think I was ever going to have. So now all of a sudden I love the sport and made such good friends over there. I mean, I walked into that room and maybe knew 2 guys just from going to all my brother's duels, right? But they just knew me as the little brother that was in junior high, right?
Okay.
And ended up becoming really good friends. Actually, my goddaughter's dad, without wrestling, I wouldn't have a goddaughter. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
So we became that good of friends through the sport. And Aaron Schudy's his name, great dude. He's still involved with Jesup Wrestling over
Oh,
there.
yeah, I know him.
Yeah.
I worked
Yeah.
with him at Omega for years.
Oh, yeah, back in the day. Yep.
Yeah.
So then sophomore year rolls around. I'm super excited to go back out and having a really good year. And, you know, I'm thinking junior year, senior year, hopefully making it down to state,
Yeah.
right? And then I got ideas I can be on the podium one year and all this stuff. And I remember going into the conference meet and we do weigh-ins, and then the coach pulls me aside and he's like, hey, I just want to let you know that today's your last day except sectionals. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, well, we made a decision. You know, we get bumped up to 2A and we only get you. So, you know, we're done. And the Bucknell family offered to let me live with them if I wanted to move, you know, open and roll back in the
Yeah.
day. And I just didn't want to leave everybody in Dunkerton. You know, I'd known those guys since kindergarten. So, interesting story. My junior year, so I'm not wrestling, right? But there's a tournament at the end of the year. So me and my brother are just scrapping. Remember that old wrestling room up in Dunkerton, like outside?
Yep.
You had to walk outdoors. So we would go up there and just kind of roll around and stay at it. And I went to that tournament, and my coach was there. And I remember I had a huge chip, right? Because I'm like, you took something from me that I loved.
Absolutely.
And I took 3rd in that tournament after not wrestling all year. And he came up to me afterwards, you know, and he just kind of had one of those talks that you need to have, you know, like, I appreciate what you're doing, but hopefully you understand why I made the decision. And like, yeah, I do, but I don't. You know, it's hard to get that just taken away.
Wow.
You know,
yeah,
and it
because
was
the coach is there for the kids. So he's thinking, well, I'm looking at these kids, but you're also one of the kids. So he's torn, but that's not the decision you'd want him to make.
No.
Wow.
And at the time, 2A was easier than 1A. I mean, 1A you had, well, you still do. Bosco, Clarksville was really good back in the day. There was tons of Wapsie. All those good schools were in 1A, and I can remember having that conversation of like, why do you want to go down?
Yeah.
Like, you're at 2A. It's a little bit easier in this area because the way districts and sectionals were done back then. So I never really did agree with the decision. I still felt that Jesup kids were better at 2A, and I didn't like having it taken from me. And yeah.
That's Woodley kind of said the same thing about golf. I can't remember if it was in his part 1 or because we're recording this Easter weekend. So Woodley's part 1 came out Friday. His part 2. So I can't remember if it's out yet or not, but he basically said the same thing. He's from Dike, New Hartford. They didn't have golf. He'd go to Grundy Center. Him and another kid, they went over there. They golfed 1 year and then just weren't asked back because it bumped them up.
Yep.
And then he said kind of famously cost them a state title in golf because they were like the bottom golfers. They were average at best. And, kind of the same situation, but dang, no, I didn't know that. Wow, that's a tough one. That's tough.
Yeah.
Okay, we got to talk about Rain Soft for a minute. Your dad was involved with that company. You get involved with that company. Tom was up there with you, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So me and Sarah, we get married. We buy a brand new trailer and we put it in the trailer courts in Dunkerton. And then that first water test comes back. You know, if anyone knows, the trailer courts in Dunkerton are surrounded by farm fields. So you got nitrates, fertilizer, just really bad stuff that it's good for the ground and for the crops, but it ain't good for your drinking water. And it basically is telling us like it's at the level of failing and it's always going to be at this level. There's nothing. And so it almost was kind of like a notice saying, we're never going to tell Wits you got to do something about your water, but just so you know, it's not good to drink. You can smell it. It's not good. And I don't know who, I mean, I remember the salesman, but it was just the deal. Like he showed up at just the right time and did his whole spiel and showed us, brought the impurities out of the water. And next thing you know, me and Sarah, young kids, just married, both full-time jobs. He's like, oh yeah, for $8,000 on credit, you can have our top of the line system, drinking water, everything. And we bought it. I mean, it wasn't a scam, obviously, because it's a great product. But to be that young and to go $8,000 in debt on a water treatment system, we should have just started buying bottled water and got a water softener, not a $8,000 water. But it taught us about debt because by the time we got out of debt, we realized don't go in it, don't ever go in it. So that was, but it was a top notch product, man. It was incredible. Okay, present day life. What's it look like? Like, what's your work like? What's the family, hobbies, stuff like that? Before we get into Alive and Running, what's the day-to-day like?
All right. So, yeah, aside from doing Alive and Running stuff every day, right? So I work full-time for Gordon Flesch Company. So we're an office technology company, copiers, printers, telephone systems, that kind of stuff.
Okay.
I began working there in 2008. A buddy of mine was working there, and I was working at Budweiser at the time. I was a sales rep, actually a district manager for Budweiser at the end. And Budweiser was a fun job, but it was very demanding on the family because you worked all day and then they wanted you to go to the bars at night and push products and all that stuff. And I had made a really good friend of mine, Jeremy Reed. He lived in Urbana at the time. We were really good Bud guys together. And Candace and his wife, Mandy, basically the same night sat us down and said, you guys either find other jobs or find a new wife because we didn't sign up for this.
Yeah.
You know, because you're going out, you're having some beers after work, you're coming home, basically going to bed because you're spent.
Yeah.
So I was talking to a buddy of mine that worked at Advanced Systems. That's what it was called back then. We got acquired in 2019. So anyway, I'm talking to him one night about it and telling him how unhappy I am. And he's like, why don't you come to work with us? And I was like, dude, I don't know anything about tech. I'm not a tech guy. I don't want to sell copiers. Like, not what I want to do. And he's like, but you love people and you'll just grab onto that part of it. You'll be fine.
Yeah.
So Lane LeBon was his name. I met him through high school sports. He was a New Hartford kid. And so I started working there, was a sales rep. And then we got acquired by Gordon Flesch Company, which is we're huge. We're the largest Canon dealer in the U.S., largest Lexmark dealer in the U.S., $220 million in sales a year, offices across 7 states. They buy us in 2019, and I interviewed for the sales manager's job. I went through the first interview, and I backed out of the second one. And our manager at the time was like, why'd you back out? And I was like, it's a new company. I don't know what to expect. I know that I can do my job as a sales rep. I've been in my territory at that time for 12 years. Mm-hmm. I love my customers, and I don't want to leave them. So I backed out of it. Time goes on. Must have been 10 months later, the manager that they put in place isn't working out. So then they asked me again, hey, will you do this?
Mm-hmm.
So I interviewed again, and I go through it, and I still cannot decide if I want to do this. And it was a tough decision because, one, I love my customers. Two, I only had to worry about myself, right? And then moving into this is a different story. But it's been the best thing for our branch for me to move into that position, to be able to, the way that they talked to me about it was, you can teach other people what you've done to build an account base that's loyal and stuff. So, yeah. So I have a team of 7 salespeople that I manage. And one of the things I told them was, you will not tie me down to a desk. If you put me at a desk, you might as well just kill me. Like, I need to be out in the field every day seeing people, because you don't learn what customers want by sitting in an ivory tower. That's my thing, right? So every day I'm out with a rep, whether it's, so I cover offices in Mason City. I always have to go across the map. Mason City, Cedar Falls, Dubuque, Cedar Rapids, Fairfield, and Davenport.
Okay.
So I travel all around those areas. I'm home every night, but I'm usually on the road by 6, and I usually get home 4:35.
Oh, yeah.
Get up in the morning, do my workout. My wife owns her own hair salon, so she's kind of doing her own thing. As far as hobbies go, man, we've really taken a liking to golf. I mean,
Really?
Yeah. I hated golf for a long. I thought it was the stupidest sport. I thought, how can grown men go out there for 5 hours on a Saturday and just chase this ball around? I hated it. I would play in like one outing a year just because people would ask me to.
Yeah.
And then 2021, I started getting into it, and I got into it that year, and then Candace got into it a little bit in 22. But then, man, 23, 24, we're season pass holders. Our son, season pass holder, so we play together as a family, and now we're those people that are out there for like 4 or 5 hours on Saturday, 4 or 5 hours on Sunday, maybe a couple nights a week.
Yeah, let that be a lesson to our young listeners right there. Life as you know it, you think it's going to stay the same. It doesn't. It changes over time. It changes your interest, especially high schoolers. Your world is so small right now. Like, there is so much more that you're going to go through and experience, and things you like today, you might be embarrassed about later on, or things that you think are embarrassing today, you're going to be. So, man, just enjoy the ride. Yeah, I definitely wanted to ask you about what you do, because I knew it had something to do, because, our church would lease the copier and stuff like that. So I knew, but it's clearly much more than like the Dunder Mifflin of the Midwest. You guys are doing more than, you're doing all the equipment and okay.
But it's funny, we joke in the office, we peg people as, Michael Scott and who's Jim.
Do you really?
Oh, yeah. Candace actually bought me these little Klingons, so I have them stuck on people's offices. Well, if you watch the show, Angela's Jane's friendliest person. So I didn't put Angela on anyone's desk.
That's a good move.
I was talking to some of the admin girls one day, and they're like, so why isn't Angela out? And I'm like, man, I'm not going to be that guy who says somebody's Angela. And so they all joked, and they're like, I think you should just move her around. Like, if someone's being that way that day, like, that's your way of letting them know, like, you're kind of being an Angela today.
Yeah.
I haven't done it yet. She's still stuck to the piece of paper. I haven't put her out yet.
Oh, that's good stuff. Yeah, for some reason, when I write these outlines and stuff, I just put little things in here, just things that come to mind. I'm just like this paper copier, printer, like all the different stuff. I was like, I'm just going to make a little Dunder Mifflin reference there. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So I'm going to bring this up 2 episodes in a row, and then we'll get into Alive and Running. So you watched the show. Yeah. Do you remember? I didn't when it was popular at all.
Nope.
Did you watch it during COVID? Is that when it kind of...
Probably. Yeah, we were way late to the game.
Yeah, so were we. So, okay, yeah, the lockdowns hit, and I talked to Woodley about this, and he wasn't able to answer it because I don't think he knew. But there's an episode where Toby, the HR guy, comes in, and he's talking to Pam about he just ran a 5K, and it went really well. And he either says it was 21 minutes or his miles were 7 minutes. So it's the same thing, okay? And I'm looking at Toby Flenderson, and as a former fat kid, you can relate. Okay, when there's a date and time when a fat kid gets in shape, I don't want to say pride like the bad pride, but you are proud of it, and you start to take notice of things. The fastest I ever ran before I was doing triathlon, when I was just doing 5Ks, and not that I was fast, but the fastest I ever ran was in Jesup because it was a short course, and it was 22 and a half. And I look at a guy like Toby Flenderson. That guy cannot run 21 minutes.
No.
You know what? Exactly.
No way.
Thank you.
No way.
7-minute miles for 3 miles, that's moving. And that guy just, probably looks very similar to me now. Probably over 200 pounds. That guy, if you're over 200 pounds and you can run a 21-minute 5K, you're pretty muscular.
Yeah.
And who out there in my audience thinks masculinity, muscles, when you think of Toby Flenderson? Nobody. So the writers dropped the ball on that. If they said 24, 25, I would have been like, absolutely, all day long. 21? Give me a break. And Troy backs me up on that. So there, problem solved. You'll never hear me mention it again. 2 episodes in a row. My family's like, you got to stop bringing this up, because it started in my living room as a big deal. But now it crept into the podcast. So sorry about that, Toby, but it's not real.
Yeah, you lied.
Okay. All right. Yeah, let's get into Alive and Running. Let's so I mean, you can go back to the beginning, why you guys started it. You can talk about as much about it as you want. This is the moment to really get out there what it is and how it's probably the biggest resource for mental health and suicide prevention and awareness in the state, for sure.
Yeah. So I think I'll start back in the beginning, really, like the day that Roger died. Okay. So, we had a group, right? 5-6 guys that were all buddies. And I remember I had gone up to the weight room at the school, worked out in the morning, came home. I got out of the shower, and my mom says, "Hey, Barb called," Roger's mom. Barb called and wanted to know if you've talked to Roger. And I said, "Not since yesterday." This is before cell phones, right? So you left school and said bye. That was it.
Yep.
I said, "Why?" And she's like, "Well, he wasn't in his room this morning when they went to wake him up." And Roger liked to wander off. He liked to have his alone time. He was a little bit of an odd spirit in those ways. Okay. I mean, now that's probably me, right? I love to be alone sometimes. Yeah. But anyway, so I thought nothing of it. I get to school. Matt Hopple got the same phone call. Jim Bob Suter got the same phone call. Those two for sure. Not sure who else. And we hadn't realized it yet that Ryan wasn't in school. We just, we're going about our day. And then I remember I was in study hall, and my next class was gym. I love gym, right? This is my sophomore year, so I'm not fat kid anymore, so now gym's fun, right? Now I don't mind shirts and skins, right?
Oh, yeah. You lucky dog.
Oh, like when you're young and you get stuck on skins, it's like the most embarrassing thing. Like, really? I don't want to be a skin.
Yep.
Anyway, so I want to go to gym. Well, they make an announcement. I'm in study hall, so the windows face Canfield, right? Mm-hmm. They come across and say there's been a death in the student body. That's all they say. So we all run to the window like, holy cow, somebody gets shot outside, or what's going on? And don't see anything. Everyone's telling us to sit down. Well, then they come in and they get me and some other people in our class, and they take us all down to a room. And at that point, we kind of realize that Ryan's not in this room. So we're like, oh, what's going on, So they tell us that Roger had taken his life and that Ryan had found him, and that's why Ryan wasn't there. So, that whole week was a blur in some ways, but so healing in other ways that, that's a Monday night, Tuesday morning, depending on when it actually happened, right? So that week, Roger's family was, when I talk about like recovery of this, so open for us. So we went out to his house like every night, and we would dig through his room, like read his old love letters, all that dirty stuff, right?
Okay.
Because he had a girlfriend at the time. Reading his old love notes, just playing his tapes, right? Cassette tapes. And just, that was so healing for us to be able to just sit there, and although Roger's not there, we're still like hanging with Roger, right? And our staff was great, as far as being there for us and everything. And so then as it comes around and we finally get to talk to Ryan and learn kind of how that all happened, and I think he has talked about it as well, but he got that same phone call, and he said to his mom, "Take me out there. Like, I feel like something's calling me there," right? Like a higher calling, right? Mm-hmm. And so he gets out there, and there was a pond. And I remember telling my mom that morning he might have went to the pond. It's a dead of winter, and Roger would go down there in the summertime all the time and skip rocks. He just loved to sit there and skip rocks on this little pond. It didn't matter if it was winter. He still liked to be around that body of water.
Okay.
And so Ryan said, "Let's go down there." So Ryan's up on the bluff, if you want to call it that. It's not really a bluff because we're in Iowa, right? And then his parents are down here, and Ryan sees him laying in the snow. So he thinks he's alive, right? The snow's blowing over him because it snowed, and he goes up to uncover him, and as he's cleaning the snow away from his head, he gets his fingers full of blood and everything, and then he realizes he's not there. weird thing about that story, so they put Ryan in a cop car, just, hey, you hang out here for a little bit while we get stuff taken care of. And I remember him telling me later in life that there was a open pistol in there that was left in that car. Like, holy cow, right?
Wow.
That's how much mental health has changed since then. That would never happen today.
No.
So, Ryan, he spent some time in mental health units, and his life changed. I mean, his freshman year, he was the first freshman to ever start Dunkerton basketball. Like I said, Dunkerton's basketball town. I truly believe he would have been a D1 player. I mean, I think he might have went to Iowa, really. He's a great player and very strong in his faith. Like, he used to wear shirts to school, like, had God all over him and everything. And this event happens, and he takes a 180. I mean, he turns into, I got both fingers up in the air at God, and I hate sports. He didn't even play basketball his junior year. His senior year, he went out, but just he didn't have his head in it, right? Like, he wasn't there.
Yep.
And then, so we graduate, and he moves to Gold Falls Villa in Cedar Falls. And we're at a Dunkerton basketball game. I'm still living at home. So it's like we graduated in May. This is December. And he wants me to move in with him in a 1-bedroom apartment. And at the time, I'm working at Young Plumbing and Heating. And I'm like, dude, I can't afford that. Like, I can't afford rent. And he's like, it's $360 a month. We'll divide it. All utilities are included. He's like, I eat so cheap. Just go get ramen noodles. You get 5 for $1. That's what you eat for lunch. And then you eat Pop-Tarts for breakfast and then eat frozen pizza for dinner. It's so cheap.
Wow.
And I remember he got a napkin out, and he's on the bleachers. How much is your take home? And I had a car payment at the time, because everyone goes into debt when you graduate, right?
Yep. Yeah.
How much your car payment? How much is your insurance? And he's like, you have enough left. I'm like, but then I don't have any money, And he's like, just do it. So I do it. Well, then I had worked previously for Reed Cadillac, which is now Community.
Okay.
So I went to Reed Cadillac and said, can I be like a part-time wash boy? Because I wanted enough money to cover the rent. So I was working full-time at Young's, and then Tuesday and Thursday nights and Saturday mornings, I would wash their rental fleet. So I had like 34 cars in their rental fleet. So I would work those 2 jobs, and eventually I started in the rain soft. So I'm working 3 jobs living with him. Well, we were young, so we're drinking beer and having a good time, right?
Yeah.
And he would get into these fits of rage. And I just told this story Tuesday night when I was talking to the Rotary. And he would get mad, right? And he'd have these flashbacks, and he would start punching me. And it's okay, because he does not punch hard at all. Like, it's a good thing he can run and shoot baskets, because fighting's not his thing. But I mean, I would let him punch on me until he was exhausted and he would just fall on the ground. So we lived that, right? So we lived together, and we went through that, and I was okay with it, right? Like, this is what it is. So then, 20s go along, and all that stuff's kind of going on, and then, so I move away, but we're still in contact. Like, he comes up and visits, and I come back here, and he's still struggling, but I know he's starting to see a therapist, and you're seeing some changes, right? Like,
Okay.
he's not fully back into believing in the guy upstairs, but he's getting there. And then, so 2009, probably, because we started in 2010. I guess I'll back up just a second. So the first time that Candace was ever going to be around him, we were going to go to Grinnell when him and Melissa were living down there, and just go down there. We were going to go out to so he used to bartend at the, I think it was the Legion or Elks, one of those two.
Okay.
So we were going to go down there and have some drinks and then go back to his house. So I warned Candace, like, if he gets drunk, he's probably going to hit me, but don't jump in. It's fine. They just let him do it.
Yeah.
So he does. And the next morning, I remember waking up and we're driving home, and she's like, holy cow, you just let that happen. I'm like, it's fine. I mean, it's so much better than something else he could be doing.
It's
right?
his way of dealing with it, and you're okay with it.
Yeah. So we're in Fairbank at our house right over here, and we're having dinner with him. So Ryan and Melissa are over this, like 2009, and we're talking about his growth, right? Like, man, I'm so glad that you got over this stuff of wanting to punch me all the time. And, now you're back in church, and you're going to support groups, and you're just doing well.
Yeah.
And they're living in Ankeny at the time. And so all of a sudden we're like, we should do something. Like, there's kidney walks, there's American Heart Association, there's cancer, all needed, absolutely needed. But there's nothing for suicide. So, of course, I'm kind of getting into running at the moment. It's always been his passion.
Mm-hmm.
Like, let's do a 5K. Like, how hard can that be? We just have people go run 3 miles and have 5K.
Yeah.
And I remember we took a piece of paper and we wrote down what relatives we thought would show up. Like, I bet Uncle Rich would come, and, Randy might not come. And we come up with like 100 people. We're like, 100 people, it'll be fine.
Yeah.
And 450 people show up that day.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh my Lord, what have we done?
Yeah.
Like, talk about opening Pandora's box, And so the first year, it was just a one-day event. 5K, go home, go on your way.
It was my first event, my first race ever.
Was it really?
Yep, first 5K ever.
So we manually timed that thing, right?
Yep.
And I remember we had this big refrigerator box, and we stuck them all on there as people came through, right?
Yeah.
And I remember we're getting ready to do awards, and Ryan's looking for him, and he can't find it. And we find Barb, Ryan's mom, and she's like, I took them all off. And we're like, oh, my Lord. So we had to take hours and go back through. It's almost like, I want to say Go Fish or something, right? Like, I got a 23:47. Anybody got anything lower? All right. And so there's 5 or 6 of us sitting around putting them all back in order to figure out who won and, who placed and all that stuff. Just learning curves, right?
Sure.
And then over the off season, right? Candace and I went to a wedding, and they released some sky lanterns for, like Grandpa and Grandma aren't there anymore. And she thought that was really cool. So she's like, we should do something on Friday night and do something like this.
Expand the event.
So then we started on Friday night with those lanterns. And the Friday night thing that we do now is still, it's great, but nothing's ever been an emotional release like those lanterns were. But they were ending up in combines and stuff like that, so we had to stop. But
yeah,
that's when it turned into a 2-day event. And, just kind of the quick path of that is, we start our first support group in Waverly, then we start one in Waterloo, then we start going around to schools, and then it just grows, right? And we've given so much money to the mental health agencies in the Cedar Valley. I think it's 70 some grand now overall between Mercy One, Unity, and Black Hawk County Mental Health, buying them stuff that makes the patient experience better. Because, we all have this vision, right? That you get stuck in this room in a straitjacket.
Yep.
I mean, I went to MHI when I was in high school.
Right.
I was scared to death because that's when it was still open. And there were people in straitjackets, and they were like crazy.
Right.
I mean, I remember leaving there like scared.
Oh, yeah.
Like, oh, my Lord. So, yeah, it's just blossomed into such a passion of helping other people.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. Ryan came on last year, right? Was it last year or the year before?
So.
I can't remember. Yeah. He was too busy year one. And so we let winter go by, and then he came on. I want to say it was like the spring or summer after that. So he shared quite a bit. So for anybody listening, if they're not, if this is their first time hearing of Alive and Running, or they've heard of it, but it really, they needed nothing that Alive and Running offered, but now their situation has changed. Where can they find you guys? Where can they connect with you guys where they can maybe get some support groups or resources or whatever? How can they find what you guys do and offer?
Yeah. So Facebook, Alive and Running Iowa for Suicide Prevention. It's a closed group, so you have to ask to be a member of it.
Okay.
And sometimes that makes it a little difficult for people to find, but we had to do that because even now we get a lot of spoofers in there. Mm-hmm. But when it was a wide open page, like where you could just like it, people write some pretty nasty stuff in there.
Sure.
So we had to be able to control it. We're on Instagram too, and we have our websites, Alive and Running Iowa, all spelled out, .com.
Okay.
And all the information on there is for like support groups. When are they? Where are they? Who do you contact? All that stuff. But social media, website, we're on there.
So, okay. So everyone knows now, if you need anything like that, there's literally no one in our area, in our state. I mean, I don't know what's going on in other states, but there's no organization doing more. And you just heard it started around the dinner table by a couple of guys and their wives, who directly were impacted by suicide. And if anybody knows me and the things I've shared on this podcast is, no offense on the guys that dress up for work, but a necktie doesn't make you an expert. I'm obviously referencing politics. I want to talk to the people with experience. I want to talk to, when it was the border thing, I want to talk to the agents. Get the politicians off the TV screen. Let me talk to the people down there. Tell me what they're seeing, what they need. You guys develop that from firsthand experience. Ryan obviously, spiraled downward and has made his way back. And if anyone wants to know, if anyone wants to hear more about that, like Ryan will tell you everything, and he will tell you what got him back on the right track for sure. And if you get tired of me saying it, like I'm telling you, what else are you going to look to in this world? If you haven't figured it out by now, every human being is flawed. Every idea we can come up with isn't the end all be all solution. There's nothing we're going to come up with, even at the heart of Alive and Running, You're not going to hear a whole lot of preaching on Saturday morning at that 5K, but if you go to Friday night or Saturday morning, you're going to hear it mentioned at some point or another that the main true source of healing is going to come from the Almighty. If you try and find it in yourself, you're not gonna find that healing there. It's not, humanity and the sinful world we live in. That's the problem. The answers aren't going to come from another human being or somewhere else in the world or some self-help book. It's just not. Those are all tools, maybe, but that true healing, just ask Ryan. He'll gladly share that with you. And because usually, people don't hear about that 180.
No.
That he flipped the bird to God and said, "I want nothing to do with it." And that's people's misconception about the Bible or a relationship with God. And even me when I was younger and I didn't know anything, people, you're all going to have your own preconceived notions. And that's why I tell my kids, even, if they come to me with scripture or something like that, I was like, God, you may think it says that, but that's not what it's saying. It doesn't matter about your feelings or your interpretation. Like, you have to actually understand what it says. God's not waiting to punish everybody. We just, we're Saturday morning away from Good Friday. Like, last night we watched Passion of the Christ as a family, just as a reminder. Like, it's easy to say Jesus went to the cross. That rolls right off the tongue. Yeah. But then you watch a depiction of how brutal it may have been. The Romans that's the one thing they were good at, was crucifixion. And it will jar you to know that somebody did that for you.
If we had to see that in today's world, people's minds would blow.
Oh, yeah. It's no different than, I follow a lot of pro-life advocates and things like that, and they'll do man on the street, and they'll find somebody who says they're pro-choice because it does sound good. You don't want to take away a woman's right to choose what to do, especially if her life is in danger and things like that. And then you show them what, a first, second, third trimester abortion look. And then these people change their mind on the spot, because now it's not just saying something. This is what that something actually is, and they change. It's like, there's got to be a better way. We got to be able to do something better than that. That's not right. So I would just encourage everybody, if you got preconceived notions about God or the Bible or healing that's available or anything, like, check it out for yourself. If you want help, you can always email me. I'm available. I live for those kinds of moments, so you can always reach out. But if you're struggling mentally, definitely reach out, get a hold of Alive and Running, their resources, what they offer, because that's what these guys live for as well. It started with just a 5K, and it's turned into this major organization. And I know sometimes you guys probably, I've had conversations with Ryan about things, and he's warned me about things that he saw coming, just statistics and numbers and things, a few years ago. Like, you guys were on the forefront. You saw that 2020 was going to have an impact on young people's mental health. We were already dealing with stuff. They were already exposed to social media, the downfalls of that, technology, smartphones, but the lockdowns, keeping people inside, God created us to be social beings. That was going to harm kids and stuff like that. But
man, kids and adults, right?
Oh, yeah.
If you think about it, when you think about doing something wrong and you're a kid, the one thing that keeps you from doing it, if it's not betraying Christ, is I don't want to go to jail.
Yeah.
I don't want to be locked down.
Punishment, yeah.
And we locked everybody down. Yeah. So everybody went into that. And I don't care who you are. I truly believe that every person that went through COVID had some type of negative impact. I know myself I did. Like, just not being able to leave the house. I mean, our company locked our sales team down till like mid-June. So I went from seeing customers every day to only being able to make phone calls and emails. And it was hard. You know?
Yeah.
You need a human connection. We're made to connect with people in person and have conversations, not emails and text messages. Man.
No, it definitely, you'll see that. And I think we'll get into that in your part 2, probably, right? Towards the end, we're going to talk about some of the impacts of, maybe not the lockdowns, but some of the impacts of social media and things like that, and technology and kids and all that stuff. So you guys are probably like, what, 14, 15 when Roger... 15 years old. Do you think it was because... Did anyone... I mean, no one else struggled the way Ryan did, right? I mean, you guys all had to deal with it, but he obviously needed way more help than that. Yeah. Do you think that's just because he was the one that found him? Or do you think if it was you that found him, do you think Ryan would have responded the same way? Or maybe you would have had way more struggles? Or what do you... Because everyone's always trying to figure out the cause of mental problems. And the more I've experienced people and people close to me that have those issues, it's almost like you can kind of pinpoint an area of what may have caught, but why it does what it does, you can't pin it down. You can only try and help.
So I think finding him was, in my opinion, the turning point for him. But so a story that a lot of people don't know is when I lived in Minnesota, I was on volunteer fire department in a small town, Amboy, Minnesota, about the size of Fairbank. And we get a call when so I'm not from there, right? So I moved there, I transplant, I'm an Iowa kid, and I'm 20 years old at the time. And we get a call for a kid that the parents think that he might be suicidal. They've checked the buildings and they can't find him. He's out on a farm. It's a Wednesday night, and he had been put on the ineligible list for Friday football. He called his girlfriend after school and said, no matter what, I'll always love you. That set her off. So she calls the mom. So anyway, we get called out there. Scary, right? They know there's a gun missing. So we know he has a gun. And so we're searching these buildings. Cops are with us. Scary. We look all around the property. Can't find him. So we go back to the mom's. Hey, he's not here. And she's like, well, there's a bridge down there that he likes to fish at. And I've not gone down there. So go check that. So we get there, and I've not told anybody on the department any of my history with Roger. Yeah. Right? Because you tie that stuff up,
Sure.
Throw it in a box.
Yep.
So we get there, and they all know him. And he's 16. And they said, you go down there because you don't know him. So I'm like, okay. So I go down there, and there he is. And he's ended his life with a shotgun. And so I go back upstairs or back up the side of the bank and tell them. And they're like, okay, call the coroner. So they send me back down with the coroner. The coroner goes down, he's dead. I mean, there's skull fragments everywhere. Then they give me a shovel to scoop everything up and put it into a bag. And we get back to the station, and, we're kind of having a beer or two. And I'm just being real quiet. And one of the guys says, you all right, man? So then I tell them the whole story. And they're like, why did you not tell us this when you came on the department? And I said, well, because you don't talk about this stuff, And they're like, we never, ever would have sent you down there if we knew that you had lost a kid the same age. It was hard for me. And I didn't know the kid. Never met him in my life. And like so many suicides. So what happened was, this is back before things were automated, right? So the ineligibility list came out. He had turned in his paperwork, but it wouldn't be updated until the morning because this is before Google and all that stuff.
Sure.
Right? So the teacher had such a hard time with it because he left a letter, right, that if he couldn't play football, life's not worth being here, all that stuff. And she was so torn up with herself because he had turned it in, but it wouldn't be updated till Thursday morning.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's rough. That's a hard one.
And that's where that blip in time, right? Like, just pause, take a breath, see what it's like in the morning, or see what it's like. Like in today's world, a lot of stuff happens so quickly. We're so instant gratification. Yep. Just pause, take a breath. Let's hold on here.
Yeah. And so like, I'm in no way saying parents can prevent these kinds of things, but it's definitely when a kid or an adult puts their value into something like that, being able to play a sport. I mean, they're basically saying, this is my identity. I'm nothing without that. Again, I go back to the Bible gives the best answers. Our identity comes from none of that. We've got to be telling our kids, your identity, your value is God-given. You are made in the image of God. Nothing else in this world is. There's not another one of you. We're different than everything else out there. I'm sorry we didn't come from animals. We're completely different from them. We have a conscience. We have got to be telling our kids, which social media is telling them the exact opposite. Not all social media is bad. I get that. I'm not that guy. But the majority of culture is telling them, you got to look a certain way. You've got to do this. You've got to achieve this. You've got to, even something as simple as just getting your college degree and making so much money or something. They're saying this is where your worth comes from. As parents, we gotta call BS on that. It doesn't come from there. No. I was just listening to a couple of sports guys this week, and they both referenced Tom Brady and Jim Carrey. Tom Brady's the GOAT, right? Jim Carrey at one point was the highest paid actor. You can find clips of them both saying, we rose to the top in our profession and we're still left wanting. Guess what happens when you get that degree or get that job, or you can run that CrossFit event in this time, or, whatever achievement you need to validate yourself, once you hit it, you're just going to want the next thing.
Yeah.
That's not how God works. God's going to tell you day one, you're not right, you're not good enough, and I want you just the way you are. Let me do my thing with you. I want a relationship for you. That's why I created you. Everything else there, from that point on is a plus.
Yeah.
You don't need that validation. That's where it comes from. So, oh man, that's hard. So definitely, parents, if you're listening, take that message to your kids that their value doesn't come from any of their achievements, accomplishments. Their identity doesn't come from that stuff. You love them for who they are, regardless of what they do or what they make of themselves or anything like that. That's tough. Be involved for sure.
Man, I tell you, we were, so we've had Emma up here a lot, right, with My Ascension, and we were at a school event down southern Iowa somewhere. Ryan and I and Candace were there, so she's doing a Q&A at the end, which she always does. And this mom stands up and says, so what do I do when I have a very good relationship with my daughter, I think? And I ask her how she is, and she tells me she's okay, but I'm not sure that she really is. I feel like she's saying that because she wants me to hear it. And Emma, as she does so well, gave such profound advice on that. So she said, what I would do is say, I'm glad to hear that you're okay, but I want you to know that if your answer was that you weren't okay, I'm okay with that too. And that just resonated with me that night, right? Like, let the kid know that you're okay if they say, I ain't doing so well.
Right.
Because as kids, we want our parents to be happy and think that we're happy. And we think that if we tell them something different, we're going to let them down. And as parents, sometimes we can create those expectations, whether intentionally or not, that we want our kids to be a certain level or excel in things and be happy. But we need to let them know, man, if your answer is you're not, that's okay too.
Yeah. I'm here for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great advice.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think you're kind of saying kids will do the same thing that you did. You'll stuff it. You'll compartmentalize it. You'll kind of lock it up and then maybe just not have to deal with, you're going to have to deal with it one way or another. And like we were sharing before we got on here, like if you know people that do that stuff down and they don't deal with it, whatever it may be, whether it's stuff at school or stuff, hard moments in life or whatever, if you don't deal with it, your body's going to react in some way or another, whether it's through your brain or something. So it really is the best way, as uncomfortable as it may be. Talk to your parents, reach out to Alive and Running, take advantage of, like you said, mental health is night and day difference. From when you guys started in, what was that, 2010? 2010 with that small race where you were putting bib tags on a unfolded coat hanger. I still remember that clearly. Which just grew into this thing at its peak, almost 1,000 people. And it's just now today, it's just this monster that's all like volunteer led, right? You guys, I mean, it's a 501c3. I fill out the paperwork every year for donations for the food. These guys don't make it. They do it because they care. And that says a lot. So if you're hurting or struggling or you got questions or you need resources, reach out. Definitely. It's okay. And these guys are here to help. This organization is definitely here to help. So would you say you guys, you and Ryan and Melissa, Candace, and even, your other family members, Tom and Russ and all the guys that help out, would you guys say you have an understanding, and you and Ryan are more on the front lines, I guess, and Ryan's always doing the trainings and you're going to places and all these different things. Would you say all your efforts, I know what the numbers say, but how do you feel like you're having an impact? I guess is how I'll leave it really open like that. The numbers may say everything's still going up as far as depression, anxiety, suicide, all that stuff. But you have to know you're having an impact. How do you feel you guys are doing?
So I look at it a couple of different ways. One, absolutely, I believe we're having an impact. One reason I think you're seeing an incline in numbers is because people are willing to admit how they died, right? So that's going to increase numbers just by families being willing to say it's suicide, whereas before they wouldn't have.
Yeah. Yep.
So there's some natural growth that way. The other part that I look at is, so I sit on the Unity Point Mental Health Board as well. So I get some inside knowledge there of statistics. And the statistics on the support line, like 988, is more than doubled in the last 2 years. So the message is out there that there's help available.
Yep.
not only is it available, but people are using it.
Yeah.
So that's what I look at is we have people that are using those services because they're hearing about them, and just the normalization. I mean, as much as putting 988 on the back of student IDs, right?
Yeah.
Governor Reynolds passed that thing, a couple of years ago. I mean, that's huge.
Sure.
There's so many people that don't know about that.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got a personal story about a friend that his daughter had a suicide attempt, bad one. I happened to run into him, and we were talking, and I brought up 988, and he's like, "What's 988?"
Didn't know about it.
This kid's maybe he's 3 years younger than me. That night he texted me and said, "You said that number's 988, right?" I said, "Yeah." He's okay. I'm gonna have a talk with her. He had no idea. So just having those awareness and ability
Getting
to
it
have
out
that
there.
conversation.
Yeah, I agree 100%. You guys have definitely, I was kind of hoping you'd say something like that and not say, because I mean, I know sometimes you can look at that stuff and you can feel like, man, you guys are investing a ton of time, a ton of effort. You would expect to see, progress and numbers come down, but the culture at large, everywhere now, you start to see people talking about it. You'll see the hotlines, you'll see commercials, you'll see ads. 20 years, like when we were in high school, there was nothing, not that I remember, nothing. You know what I mean? You got from your dads was your only advice, and it was deal with it. Life's hard, deal with it. Well, some people can't. Some people can't. And you guys definitely stand in the gap. And again, biblical reference right there. You stand in the gap, man. That's it. Except it's more than just standing. You guys are definitely proactive. So you got any last, if somebody's out there and they're hurting or struggling, you got any advice or, not necessarily words of wisdom or something, but what would you say to them if they're listening today and they're somewhat open to maybe getting some help? What would you say to them if they're in need?
I would say reach out. I mean, 988 is a wonderful resource. A very good friend of mine went through a divorce a couple years ago and was dealing with it the wrong way, right? Jack Daniels, that's what he was doing.
Yep.
And just spiraling downhill terribly. And he talked to me one Monday morning, and he said, "Hey, I just wanted to let you know that I'm here because of 988. And I said, "Tell me more about that." And he's like, "Well, last night I was, down at the bottom of my fifth, and it's 2:00 in the morning, and I was on the phone with him for 4 hours." And I said, "Why didn't you call me?" He's like, "Dude, it's 2:00 in the morning. I know you get up at 4. I'm not calling you." He goes, "So I thought I'll try this."
Sure.
And he's still here.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Guys, this stuff doesn't play favorites. It doesn't matter. You could be going through a divorce. You could be struggling with alcohol. You could be super successful and your life looks good on the outside. Mental health, suicide, that stuff, it plays no favorites. It'll come for anybody. It doesn't care who you are, where you're at in life, anything like that. So definitely take advantage of the resources out there. There's no shame in that whatsoever. We'd rather you be here than not be here. So,
Yeah.
And that's definitely the message you get with Alive and Running, because you guys have brought in speakers. You mentioned Emma and different things, but you guys had the Native American guy the one year. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter if reservations are known for having these horrible conditions. It doesn't matter. You got multimillionaires that are struggling with it runs the whole
Williams,
spectrum. Yeah, Robin Williams. There you go. Perfect example. It doesn't matter, guys. Deal with this stuff and you won't regret it. So, all right. Well, that'll do it for part 1 with co-founder of Alive and Running Iowa, Troy Belmer. I hope his story and the things he shared encouraged you, maybe even enlightened you or challenged you. Everyone has a story to tell, an experience to share, and that's what we do down here in my basement. We let people share what life has been like for them. An honest look, no social media, phony filters, like the banner says, the good, the bad, the highs, the lows, and everything funny in between. So, but this isn't the end of his episode. There's going to be a part 2 next week. We're going to get into segments, and we're going to focus more on that have some laughs part. And there go the dogs. It's an official episode, of course. Every episode. We're going to get into his segments, have some laughs. We may also get into some more serious topics like the rise of women's wrestling. I don't think we've covered that yet. That's a good choice. We may talk, I know we're going to talk about social media and its effect on mental health. So, and like I said, guys, I always say it. I love hearing from people with real experience, not the so-called experts just because they have a necktie. Nothing against ties, but that doesn't make you an expert. So you don't want to miss it. Be sure and come back. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with your family and friends. please help us grow and reach more and more people. Don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, share, wherever you listen or watch podcasts. Follow us on social media, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. There's always good reels on there, pictures, encouraging stuff. So if you got questions, comments, ideas, or you want some merch, or you want more information apart from the Alive and Running Facebook page or their website or anything like that, you can reach out to me, whatisappodcast@gmail.com. Ryan and Troy's information is on the internet. You can reach out to them, Alive and Running, all that good stuff. So if you need help with anything or you want to talk deeper, just reach out. We will all respond and help any way that we can. So thank you guys so much for listening. Your support means everything to me and my family. Lord willing, I'll talk to you on the next one.